So hello and welcome everybody. My name's Ruth Jennaway, and today we're going to be listening to some stories of food and resilience from Tang Hall. So I'm Ruth Jennaway from Edible York, and we're very much about food and sustainability and local provenance of food and getting the community involved. So why did we choose to highlight sort of these stories of food and resilience? I'm going to come on to that in my welcome in a second. But let me tell you about the other people we're going to hear from with some of these stories. So we've got Anna Hunter, who's from Tang Hall Big Local. She's project lead there. So she's going to talk about some of the background to how some of these great things have been set up in Tang Hall. We've also got Stephen Collins, who is the community centre manager at Tang Hall Community Centre. So he's going to tell us a bit about what's been going on this year and some of the cool things that they are running at the community centre there. We've also got a speaker, fantastic, Joe from Food Circle, who's going to talk to us about local food and a lot of his connections and how he's connected to Tang Hall and doing great stuff with both cooking and providing local food there. And last but not least is Louise, who is going to talk about the Edible York's Abundance Project. She's our abundance coordinator for Edible York and what we've been doing with fruit and apples and distributing those around York, but also some of the food related activities that Abundance have got involved in Tang Hall. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the day. We've got a number of different speakers and we'll have a short talk from each of them, a little Q&A, and then hopefully we've got a chance for a little panel Q&A right at the end. So why stories of food and resilience? Well, just to kind of set the scene really, my colleague Bill Eve has been helping out at Tang Hall through the COVID period, and we've got a lot of really good things going on down there, and we've really in recent years become more and more aware of some of the interesting things that have been happening in Tang Hall, and particularly in the community centre. It's been running impressively well as a community centre with engaging and supporting local people, but it's also become a bit of a hub for those food related activities. But these things don't just happen by magic. So we're going to take a look today at some of the structure behind how some of those things have been enabled for Tang Hall with Anna, and some of the people and projects who are involved there. And of course, COVID-19 has changed things dramatically with what can be done at the centre this year. So there's been obviously some government restrictions, but there's also been an enormous amount of support for trying to make sure that the local community is still helped and supported by local people and local volunteers. And quite a lot of activity has still been possible, particularly with that support during this tricky period. So activities have been different, but nevertheless clustering things, definitely about food and relationships with local people. So things have still been happening down there, and that's really what we want to tap into and tell some good news stories about today. So we're fortunate to have these four great speakers who've nobly agreed to share their stories outlining some of the thinking, the challenges and the achievements that have been going on within the Tang Hall area and the Tang Hall Community Centre itself. So we're going to talk to Anna, to Stephen, to Joe and to Louise. So let's start off with Anna, if I may. So Anna works for Tang Hall Big Local, and maybe Anna can start us off by talking about why food is so important to you, and maybe why good food and community engagement has been such a big driver at Tang Hall Big Local. Do you want to talk as yourself, or do you want to start straight into the slides, Anna?
You're going to start straight into the slides, and I'll talk
Cool.
to the slides. Yeah.
Excellent. Go. Oh, Anna, straight into those slides. Have I missed them? Right. Let's go and make sure. Yeah, you gave me a separate slide deck, so I need to switch over to those and go F5. Can you see that?
Yes. Thank you.
Let's start talking. Fantastic.
So are you? Thank you. So thank you for the invitation. Are you going to click through the slide, Ruth?
I will.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. So as Ruth was saying, what I want to do is very briefly talk about my lived experience and why I have a passion and philosophy about good food. And then I'm going to talk quite quickly, because we've got a lot to get through, about what we've done as Tang Hall Big Local and the people and organisations that we work with and how lucky we are. So next slide. So my childhood was very much sort of, the apple one is one of my favourite pictures, and it's about getting to the core of things. My childhood was very much about eating food from scratch. My dad had 2 allotments. We had very little processed food. So we had community eating in the Polish community in Huddersfield, very used to eating decent food that was economical, but also in a social way. And I think that really affected my philosophy. And I think we can all see the outcomes of not eating well, or understanding the importance of food and how it affects us physically and emotionally, and as well as it being part of community cohesion. I mean, who wouldn't want the sensual pleasure of eating good food and looking forward to it 3 times a day? So I think growing up and my background has given me the confidence to push forward with a philosophy and a passion. And I'd already got previous in York in this area, in the sense that I have been a trustee of Edible York, and I ran Abundance for a number of years, and I was a member for many years of the York Environment Forum. So I think I've got an understanding of the sustainability of not only about how important it is to be part of nature, but how that interacts with us, and how food as an everyday need binds us together as a society. And if this connection is based on the best intentions and quality, then this will inevitably impact in a good way and how we treat ourselves and those around us. So coming in as chair to Tang Hall Big Local, I brought a distinct ethos with regard to food-based activities and how it's valued in our plans. Sorry, can you just go, sorry, I've forgotten about the slides. Can you do the next one? So that's Edible York. Yeah, so now we're at Tang Hall Big Local. So for those of you who don't know about Tang Hall Big Local, it's a nationally lottery funded programme where an area in York, if there's people outside of York, was of about between 9,000 and 11,000 people. A specific geographical area was given £1 million to spend over 10 years to make the area a better place to live. And we're in year 5 of our plan. So and it started in 2013 and our first plan was in 2015. So I want to just talk about how important good quality food and food-based activities have been to Tang Hall Big Local, and then specifically what we've done to prove, as in, you know, we've been walking our talk as opposed to just talking. So next slide. Oh, sorry, can you just go back to the last one? So when we first started, and we were doing consultation, we used local businesses and used food as a way of bringing people in and talking to people whilst we were consulting and deciding what we're going to spend our money on. And inevitably people did talk about food. So next slide. So in 2015, we actually launched Tang Hall Big Local, and we did this amazing cake, which cost £900, funny enough, as a way of showing people how important food was. And actually on that launch party, the local deli closed closed their business for the day and actually came into the school where the launch party was and did a brilliant spread for us. And we also had a food co-op for youngsters there, which was amazing. So we actually incorporated food then activity into our local plan. And next slide. Some of the things that we funded through community grants was a food co-op, which Stephen will talk about later on. And we've, as part of our community grant scheme, and we also did a meet and eat grant for a woman who's taught us a huge amount about vegan food called Kat. And that was a weekly meal for people to see what vegan food might look like, and it was brilliant. So then we started to put food at the heart of everything. Next slide. At the heart of everything, and we developed these Wednesday picnics. And sort of a discussion about food hunger and working with City of York Council. And we actually started slowly in the sense that the first year we worked we got food from Morrison's. We spent about £120 a week and got food in and did effectively like a picnic. But then we had the good fortune to meet Joe Fennerty, who came into the centre with his views, and he'll talk about what he's going to do a little bit later. And together we developed the idea of Wednesday picnics, where they actually cooked and delivered a meal. So every Wednesday we had this amazing community meal that people could try out all different foods and vegetables, which she can talk about. And we had, from a slow start, we ended up up to 100 people a week, particularly during the summer. And it's just been amazing development of working together with people at the community centre, so community base, with the community centre itself, with City of York Council, with other people. We worked in a collaborative way to develop a food offering that was very social, but also without being obvious. I mean, we didn't sort of ram it down people's throats, that it was just very good quality. And then the following year, next slide, we worked with Joe to develop, to offer training for local residents, and we had 4 local residents, and you can see John there in his prime, who's also a cleaner and a very important member of the community centre, to develop their ideas about what they wanted to do. So Joe would work with them and ask them what they wanted, and over an 8-week, I think it was 6 or 8 weeks, they developed their skills in terms of what they were then able to deliver, and they worked for us on Wednesday picnics the following year. So I mean, that was just an amazing, sort of a bit unexpected, but because Joe was there, it was all part of the collaboration. Next slide. So we started to offer, well, we continue to offer good food as part of every event that we did. So you could see here that when we did the fun day, we bought, and there's members of our partnership, there's Louise there. At every event, there was just a very good food offering, and you can see that people were enjoying what we were able to offer. And the response and the feedback was just phenomenal. Next slide. So we also have helped as part of developing business locally, which is also part of a plan. And we've been very happy to support Joe because it's part of our philosophy. So not only is he physically there, it's all bringing his skill set. It's helped us to develop and raise the standard, or raise our game of what we've been able to offer in the area in terms of what we support. Next slide. And then when we came to the COVID-19, we've been able to support the community centre, and Stephen will talk a lot more about that. So we're sort of there in the background all the time, and we're there, we offered our volunteering help, but also if anybody needed any help and there's nothing left, we were able to add value to what it is that people were able to do. Next slide. So since COVID-19, that the second lockdown, so since the first lockdown, we've restarted the Wednesday picnics, because obviously we weren't able to offer them. So we've restarted the Wednesday picnics, but we've also started our breakfast club, which was something that we were able to do only recently. We'd started originally with the breakfast club as a Friday offering about a year ago, where we'd got extra food from Waitrose and were able to give that out as part of what we offered on a Friday morning. But now, because you have to do everything outside, it's slightly different, and we have and work with your CAF and other people to be able to continue to follow through with what we think is really important. Next slide. So we've got some national recognition of our work. So we'd had the bigwigs from the National Lottery been to visit, and they're amazed at the food that we offer. Local Trust, which is our big national funder, came and asked us about what we were doing. So we were able to share different ways of, show them different things about what we were doing. Next slide. And then we had an article in the Sunday Telegraph a couple of months ago, just showing and giving a bit of background about what it is that we do. Next slide. So we wouldn't be able to do this without the people who work with us. So with City of York Council, so we have Maura, who's an expert on communities, working on our partnership. The Community Centre, Stephen's being very supportive and part of the partnership, and obviously like-minded, as is Food Circle and Joe. So we've worked closely together. Community based, we're able to support us on with our Wednesday picnic originally, and we miss them being at the centre at the moment. We're working at the moment with your CAF, and we've had support from Tang Hall businesses and all our wonderful volunteers. And next slide. And there is just, have you got it? There's just a short video, if you could stop it at 1:30, from a resident who has been to our Wednesday picnics, and it just shows a little bit of the impact about what people have been saying in our local area.
Yeah, so what do you think of the food here at Tang Hall Big Picnic?
Food's amazing. It's always pop home cooked food. It's also inspired me to cook differently and just maybe be a little bit more creative. And one thing I've always noticed, the food's always colourful, whether it's the hot food or the cold foods, and the puddings as well, they're always colourful. And that's something that I quite like to have at home. But I kind of think I can probably do better. And it's all quite simple, really, but it's really tasty. And just, well, even the kids like it as well, so that's always a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you think you might cook differently?
I'll just try and be a little bit more creative, so adding things like the other week there was a pulled pork bake, and it had plums and beetroot in, which I would have never have thought to put something like that in a pulled pork recipe, but it really worked well, so I definitely want to try that. And I'm always saying I need this recipe, and just adding probably more vegetables in, which instead of just a few bits that I think is enough, but you can probably add way more vegetables into these meals, and the kids will eat it as well.
Have you ever been to the family festival?
I went to the one this year a couple of weeks ago, and it was really, really good. The kids absolutely loved it. Even Daddy enjoyed it, my husband. He was holding one of these massive stick insects, and I've never seen him so happy.
So great video there from Tang Hall, and I think there's just one last slide with the contact details. So there's the contact details for Tang Hall Big Local. You need to get in touch.
That one, isn't it? There we go.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. So thank you very much, Anna.
Pleasure.
Are you or any of the
the
local
contact
groups growing food as a community garden? Help yourself fed.
Stephen will be able to answer that later on.
Better one for Stephen.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, you'll be back on the panel at the end, I hope, Anna.
Okay.
So I'll hand over to Stephen, I think, next. I just need to get my other slides up, which is there. And should have So next up, Stephen Collins. So
Hello.
hi, Stephen.
Hello
Lovely
there.
to have you. And you're the centre manager at Tang Hall Community Centre.
Yeah. So thank you, Ruth. So it was basically, first of all, it's, to be a centre manager here in Tang Hall, I always say this, it is a complete and utter privilege to do this role. I've been doing it for 4 years now, since 2016. Previously, my career was all environmental. I used to work for DEFRA and then moved to Natural England, and I had a 13-year career doing that. And then I just kind of had itchy feet, and I wanted to I really liked bits of work where I was dealing with people as opposed to animals and landscapes. So I made a conscious decision to move into community, and I've never looked back. Basically, the point of my slot here today, of what I just wanted to talk about, was this one ethos, which is surround yourself with good people. And I honestly believe you can kind of achieve anything if you surround yourself with good people. Ruth, if you wouldn't mind doing the first slide, thank you. So just to talk very briefly about the community centre. The picture you see there is an outside shot of that. That was a really nice, I think that was the family festival which Tang Hall Big Local funded, and it was just everybody kind of coming together to do that. What you don't see there is a really full inside, for the rooms there as well. So a good event for us was getting up to, we would have 600 people through the door, which obviously you can't do now, but it's that type of thing. It was just vibrant is what I would say. So we've kind of gone from low usage, and we were a bit run down, as a building and things like that. And it was basically that is ourselves as a charity. We are there, we are a building, we are a venue. But on top of that, what we try to do as we go along is to make Tang Hall a great place to live and work. That is in our constitution of what we want to try and help. And it's trustees, it's volunteers, very much volunteers, it's staff who help make that happen. To a time where in March, just before COVID, we were full occupancy. And as I said, that word, we are vibrant. And behind that, I think for me, it's the centre has been a home. And this is the same for many people who come to the centre. It's family, it can be fun. But the other thing is it can be really supportive as well. A lot of what the feedback I get, I won't swear here, is that they're really surprised that it's actually can be really good here. Because I think a lot of people think of community centres and think that, you can come in and expect them to be rubbish. So Ruth, if you wouldn't mind going to slide 2. So this is what we saw in those early days, was how food brought people together. Now we'd kind of run cafes, we'd always kind of offered cuppers, and staff and volunteer here. We used to regularly sit round and have lunch together, and we used to see that really spill out into whoever was around. And lunches, particularly on a Friday, we used to do it. You'd easily have a dozen to 20 people kind of sat around, having lunch. And it was that we just saw that, and that gave a lot of the inspiration behind Tang Hall Food Cooperative, which these 3 pictures are about. And then on the top level of it, that a food cooperative, which is basically a shipping container in our courtyard back in them days. So it's an empty box. And the ethos behind it was, let's tackle these 2 major issues that we have in the area. The first one is social isolation. So that's basically lonely people. And the second part of that is health inequality. So within this box, we filled it with multiple things. You can see lots of objects in the background there, but we tried to fill it with collective control. So that was, everybody has a say, and we kind of try and run it depending on, we wanted this very kind of people having the say in it. We really wanted to try to do that. So we filled it with that, we filled it with love. And then the other thing we really tried to do is fill it with good quality produce. Now, we've tried lots of things, you know, in the 2 years. That was a funded project for 2 years, and we tried lots of things. We had the ability to try lots of things because we were funded, which was brilliant. So we tried it as pay-as-you-feel fruit and veg. We tried it to be completely volunteer run. We tried selling whole food goods at costs. We did cooking lessons, just something like that. We chopped and changed it a lot to try and get it to work. Now, in my eyes, you know, that was a very sustainable project, because the next Joe's going to come up and talk about how he runs it now, and it is a really vibrant place to come and buy your food. So if you wouldn't mind going on to the next slide, Ruth. So all that kind of goodness and stuff like that obviously came crashing to a, well, no, the goodness didn't come crashing to a halt, but basically in March, as we all know, COVID hit, and we as a community centre, I was very proud that we had a place in the community. So when that first wave set up, the local authority, their response to COVID was to set up 12 hubs across York, with the main principle of using those hubs to support community and to feed those people stuck at home who were vulnerable. So in terms of how we did it differently to the other hubs, in the fact that we didn't just hand the keys over. We said, and this was because of our place in the community, let us do it. Let the community kind of come in and help run that hub. And so, you know, a lot of how we shaped it was down to ourselves improving things as we went on, because what we did from standstill in 3 days, we got the hub running. And those 3 days turned out to be 161 days of delivering this hub. But in 3 days, we had 70 volunteers on the books, all kind of keyed up and good to do this. And this is what I mean about just surround yourself with good people. So there we were running the official hub of how to feed people. And going back in March, you know, there's a couple of people on this kind of call here who were involved with it, who, when we had the central government food parcels arrive, we were all poised waiting for the lorries to come in, and we cried when it kind of came in, because it was so disappointing, so wrong. We cheered when the local government, when York City Council stepped in, because they saw how bad the central government food provision was, and they put their hands in their pockets and they paid for food. We beamed, absolutely beamed with the donations we got. In terms of, we had a hall full of food and half of it was from donations. And on a personal level, I wept when Tang Hall Big Local stepped in and helped with the logistics of running that. But in terms of, if you look at the collage of those rogues gallery, some of them there on the left-hand side, those were our volunteers, you know, just people in our community. We've got teachers, we've got soldiers, we had a nurse there. And it's just people who you see day to day in Tang Hall. So what those volunteers did was, over those days, they sent out 1,137 emergency food parcels. And that was going to sick, sometimes dying people who were at home. A lot of them were lonely, a lot of them were scared. It was, and what I'd say is, it was really tough work, especially in the early days. but it's also, I think it's one of the proudest moments that I have as, you know, running this kind of centre here, in terms of, and it really brought home to me how we should operate in future. You know, it is just working in partnership, and we can do things. So that's working with other charities, but working with businesses, but just as important, it's working with individuals. So it's, you know, just Joe down the road, not Joe, because but someone down the road, their viewpoint is just as important as a charity, because they can bring amazing things with it. And we went from giving, you know, those kind of emergency food parcels to fresh fruit and veg, toiletries, toilet rolls, pet food, you name it, kind of thing. So if we move on to the next slide, Ruth, if you don't mind. So whilst that was all kind of going on, we kind of were at a stage where we were seeing, because we were knocking on people's doors, we were seeing what was kind of going on, and we knew that we were concerned by what we were seeing. It was people's mental health was really dipping, and Joe, very much, bless him, it was him who suggested, first of all, why don't we do some hot meals and send them out? And that was where Isolation Grub Club was born, which is what I'll kind of talk about next. And what that was over a period, we basically cooked 6,000 meals, freshly cooked meals, and delivered them with our amazing volunteers to those who were isolated and were really desperate and in need, who were really suffering. It's kind of like, it was just an amazing thing. So that black and white hipster photo there that's Steve from Choose to Youth, which is a cafe in Hull Road Park, and that's Jim, who's the chef for Food Circle. And what I'd say is we worked them hard on the days they were cooking. They were up early, they were cooking a lot of meals. Similarly, we worked, you know, volunteers worked really hard to deliver those meals. The other thing I would say is it was lovely because volunteers were actually really happy as well, because, you know, in that first lockdown, they were really happy because they were allowed out. They got to talk to people. It was lovely to see. And then the important thing about those little boxes of food, which you see there, is that they were quite often the highlights of people's weeks, you know, being delivered pots of food, socially distanced, and a bit of contact from the outside world really did make a difference. And then the thing to remember is those people who we were delivering to were really, you know, some of our most vulnerable, and a lot of them we're still kind of in contact with on a weekly basis through telephone support, which our volunteers still continue to do today. So to kind of wind things up, if I can go to my last slide, please, Ruth. So I just want to say, you know, food is amazing. It cheers us up. It's, but from what I've seen this year, it can stop an empty stomach, which is hurting. It can stop that. It can give people strength to fight disease. We've seen that. But it's that thing, it is the people behind it who make it interesting. Of the three people there, our youngest volunteer there, for 6 months, she delivered food parcels with her mother, and just did us so proud with kind of everything that she did. The chap in the middle, he was, you know, struggling with everything just as much as many of us did, but, you know, he gave absolutely everything to help each other's. And then the last picture there is of a lovely lady whose door we probably knocked on probably about 100 times this year, to really support, you know, and she's still there complaining that Jim's making the cottage pie too spicy and things like that. But it's just it's the people who really kind of make it. So just to kind of summarize, I think it's about partnerships, but particularly with people, not just businesses and organizations. The other thing we've learned is contradictions are fine. You know, we can be dealing with excess supermarket food one minute and then dealing with Joe's finest tomatoes the next. The main thing is it's working together to try and do good things. And then the final thing is just really how important food is, not just in terms of to tackle, to give us strength physically, but to tackle mental health. That is the key thing for us at the moment, is mental health, and food is a way of kind of supporting that. So yeah, so that is me. Thank you very much for listening to me ramble.
Not at all. Brilliant. Thank you, Stephen. We have got one question in the chat for you, though.
Yeah.
From Leslie Jones, who said, what sort of food did the central government send?
It was
Spill the beans.
we wish it was criminal, is what I'd say. It was, first of all, the food truck stopped off at the food bank unannounced and just said that they were commandeering some of the food bank's food, and then they just turned up at all the hubs and delivered it. And if you imagine a standard food crate, I was expecting to fill that haul up, and I think, with trying not to exaggerate, it was probably about 3 boxes, which if I was having a good day, I could carry every bit of food that was delivered with no hint of when the next delivery was kind of coming. It did have, they didn't just go to the food bank. They got some other food from somewhere else, but there was out of date stuff in there. There was moldy bread in there, and I kid you not when I say people were crying when they saw it. You know.
Nightmare. Thank you, Stephen. Stick around for our panel at the end. I'm sure there'll be some other questions coming up as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have Joe, and Joe Fennerty has set up Food Circle, and apparently he's going to tell us about the guiding principles behind Food Circle, and tell us a bit about what you've been doing at Tang Hall as well, Joe.
Hey there. Yeah, so I guess we're going to be talking about resilience in a different way. We're trying to form our own resilient local food economy, really. So it's about systems, really. The farming, growing methods, the processing behind it, whether that's the killing, the drying, the cleaning, the milling, the logistics of how we actually get it to you, the selling, marketing, and education, as well as the waste, whether that's repurposing or just to make it as minimal as possible. We're kind of at a stage now where agriculture could go a couple of ways. I think it very much looks like farms are going to get bigger rather than smaller anytime soon. There's going to be a necessity on technology, robotics, machinery, the no-till direct drill systems, and rewilding. These are the 3 kind of big aspects in terms of reducing environmental impacts on large-scale agriculture. But for me, I think this is completely disregarding a different way of looking at it, to be honest, which is to go small and look at kind of local food systems, and that's exactly what Food Circle is trying to do. So we've got a couple of priorities really in terms of the business. First one was really trying to build a sympathetic and invested, that's financially and emotionally, customer base here in York, and you just can't underestimate really the importance of our customers right now. The buying power for these kind of small scale producers is massive. When I first came to York, it was quite clear that firstly there was very few local small scale production in Yorkshire, despite being one of the biggest agricultural counties in the UK. But the other point of note was that all these producers had been going for 10 years plus. They were fairly well established, but there was just no new entrants since I came to York, which was, yeah, very worrying when your food business is based on it. But with developing this market in York, I'd like to think we're now at a position where we can really encourage small scale production. We've got 2 examples in the last 18 months. Dom, who runs Yorkshire Fungi, mushroom production in Wemby, just outside York, and Ben, who runs a market garden, which there's not many examples of them in the UK, but it's Rocket and Russet out in Fangfoss. And through investment from our customers, we can put that investment in producers. So we've given £1,000 to Ben to set up a small scale soft fruit production, and a couple £100 to Dom to get a cold storage for his mushrooms. So they're not massive amounts that we invest, but this means a hell of a lot when you're starting your first couple of foundation years as a producer. The other thing that we're really looking to do is developing small scale infrastructure and logistics, supporting producers to get their products to market. So as we've seen, like the modern system grow bigger and bigger, basically all that infrastructure has been lost over the years. So there are projects up and down the country trying to develop this. One such thing is the Grain Alliance, which settles in the UK, and it's a good example of how it works throughout the chain, from putting the seed in the ground for you chewing on a bit of bread at the end, like. But so we've used the UK network to source a number of different seeds, which is not only better for biodiversity, but these tend to be older heritage varieties, which are a little bit more resilient and better placed for organic systems. And also they taste really great, which is ultimately something that's lost in the modern food system. So we got the seed. That means very little, to be honest, unless you've got the means to then process it. We're very fortunate to work with Stringers on the Wolds, who have invested in the last 12 months in both grain cleaner and dryer. So as everyone knows, this summer, it was an absolute nightmare come to harvest time, especially on the Wolds, where apparently there was hail during harvest time, which isn't ideal. But having these bits of infrastructure in place meant that when he got the grain out of the field, he was able to dry it to a safe moisture content, which is heavily important. Having his own cleaner means that he doesn't have to deal with seed merchants, which muddy the waters somewhat, and means that he can create a direct chain with the mills. So it's like little bits of infrastructure like that, a couple of grand on a cleaner, a couple of grand on a silo for mills, so that they're able to take very small deliveries from individual farms, means that very slowly we can start setting up more direct, more localized chains, and we are basically starting with nothing. So that's one side. And the final focus, one which I try and push with absolutely everything we do, is the economic viability of food production. Quite a lot of good food that's being produced is via third sector, charity and community-based activities, which is absolutely brilliant and brings a massive educational element to it, which is often lost. But fundamentally, we don't have the commercial operations up and running in Yorkshire to create anything like a sustainable system for a significant amount of people. So my emphasis always is to make the market right so that we can support commercial businesses. And an example of that is the York Orchard Cooperative. Commercial unsprayed fruit is just a nightmare to get hold of. The market has just created such a bottom price, and the kind of supermarkets have really distorted what our ideas are about good fruit. So we've worked with a couple of private orchards, and Louise, who's about to speak, at Abundance, to try and, you know, restore some of the best fruit you'll ever have, its value within our own communities. So yeah, that's kind of important. But why Tang Hall? There was a couple of reasons why we decided to set up there. The first one being, you know, we're trying to create a new food system, and ultimately we wanted it to be for everyone. Otherwise, you know, there's no point. So Tang Hall is seen as one of the more deprived areas in York. It's got a great community following, which was exactly the other reason why we wanted to be there. This was meant to be a community, not only a network of great producers, so they're not out there alone in their fields, they feel part of something, but, you know, a sense of community at the markets, that there is a sense of belonging, and that we are contributing to hopefully a better system in place. But I've been at Tang Hall for 3 years now, and to be quite honest, it's contributed far more than I would have expected for the business. Not only the facilities, we took over the food co-op as Stephen was showing, and gave us space for the trailer. But it was just the fact that Stephen and Anna are completely open to doing, to be quite honest, some mental ideas. So, like, you know, the pop-up chop shop, butchering a couple of carcasses in a sports hall in front of, you know, local community. Yeah, you can't do that at most places. I've tried, and to be honest, they wouldn't. The level of investment and commissions from Tang Hall Big Local meant that we were able to meet and reach the local community. That 6-week cooking course was probably one of the best things that we actually managed to do at the centre, and is still having an impact even now. And to be honest, right now, Barry, the community van, is the only reason why my business is on the road right now. And it's an important point, because the last 3 years I've had a fair few crises, and Tang Hall is a family, and I think the last year has proven that. We have never stopped once, which is testament to the fact that, you know, Stephen and the centre, you know, we're here to serve a community, and I'm here to serve local producers, but that just wouldn't have happened without the support of the centre. So yeah, I think that'll do, Ruth.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joe. We're running fairly tight for time, but we've got 2 minutes, and I've got a couple of questions have come in on the chat window for you. One of them is somebody interested in the fungi person, so maybe you can type in an answer to that one in a second. Somebody's asking, how many small-scale food producers are there? I'm going to widen that to in and around York. And is the number increasing?
Slowly. It's not decreasing, which is the important point. We've had a few new entrants, the one I mentioned, but other than that, there's very little. Microgreens seem to be a very popular thing at the minute, because obviously cash flow is fairly quick with those businesses. But to be honest, the ones that I'm interested in, we've probably got just over 20, I would say, small scale, low input, the kind of farming which I think we should be investing in. So not masses.
Cool. And somebody's saying, has Joe tried setting up in other communities before Tang Hall originally, and how did it go?
So no, Tang Hall Food Circle started with Tang Hall, but I've worked for around 7 years in community growing and cooking projects in London, Edinburgh and Leeds. So I have no doubt, if it's as Stephen says, I think if you have the right kind of people involved, honestly, it can work. And I think we're just seeing the successes now, really. I think the producer network, that community is incredibly strong. I think the fact that they no longer feel like they're alone, they're all dealing with incredibly complex problems, to be honest. It's not only the production of food, but how you actually process it and market it and do it in a safe way and get it to your customers at a price which people aren't just going to turn away from. You know, then they are working everything out for themselves, basically. But in this network, yeah, we're seeing some good things.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Joe. Stick around. We've got a panel question and answer at the end. That would be great if you could hang around for that one. And that takes us through to, last but not least, Louise, who's been working with Edible York on our Abundance project. But she's the driving force behind this. So over to Louise.
Hello, can you hear me? Yep, good. Right, okay. I don't seem to be seeing my face, but that's okay. Do you want me to share my screen now?
Yeah, I need to jump over that window, find Louise and make host. There you go.
I was going to try and be quick, but yeah, we'll just do this. This will stop other yes, continue. And it's that one I want to share. Sorry. Here we go. Right. Good. That's great. Why am I okay? Right. Is it not coming up?
Not yet.
Oh, it is for me. For some reason.
Oh, it is. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, is that good? As we say, I can see what I'm sharing. I hope everybody else can, but I can't see myself in the screen. So if I'm not looking directly at you, I can see Ruth for some reason. Okay. Right, I'll be quick. I'll give you a quick roundup of, if you don't know who Abundance is, we are Edible York's urban harvesting project. So our main aim is to harvest apples from people's gardens or other green spaces where they may not necessarily get harvested. Abundance has been running for, I think, about 10 years. I keep meaning to look up the start date. As Anna said earlier, she was one of the first people sort of doing the Abundance project. It sort of started up at the same time as Edible York, and they've kind of merged together, and we're now sort of one of their projects. Let me think. Right, so basically this is a picture of, here's a picker, and there's an apple tree, and that's an apple tree in Tang Hall. It's on Melrosegate, if anybody recognises it. It's just around the corner from the community centre. It's not really an apple we have tried to eat, but I've just picked some the other week and we're going to give them a try. So we pick these apples, we pick tons of apples, and we redistribute them. We don't just do apples though, we'll quite happily take anything else, fresh food wise. We have done pumpkins. The last couple of years York Dungeons has given us pumpkins after Halloween, because they have them as part of their display. So this year they gave us 90 pumpkins, which I managed to redistribute within a week. I think someone went to the community centre. And we are quite, I haven't got any pictures of this, but we're also quite happy to take up other gleaning opportunities. In March, during the first lockdown, we were told about some fields of potatoes, and Ruth took the lead on that, and she went out to these potato fields with, I don't know, was there about 20, 30 volunteers, Ruth?
Yeah, I think we had 40 in total over 3 or 4 picking days.
Yep, great. So we got several, well, quite a lot of potatoes. I should have written down how many. We got lots of potatoes, and they went straight out to all the council food hubs on the whole. And we also sent some to the Supper Collective, which were another group doing a very similar thing to the Isolation Grub Club. So there's lots of different things going on in York, but to sort of concentrate this on what we've done with Tang Hall Community Centre. Over the years, we have taken apples to Tang Hall, and they've slotted into various different things that the community centre is doing. So whether that was the food co-op, or whether it was the picnics or the other events going on, the sort of like your cafe, and things with, in fact, all sorts of different things. We've taken apples there and they've been used in different ways. We've also done, let me go on. So there we go. When we first started, it was just sort of like some food randomly shoved in the foyer at Tang Hall, and people could just pick up stuff for free. So that was a very sort of early incarnation of the food hub. And then there's a box of fruit, and we also used the community centre to drop things off, to leave things for sort of other people who are going to redistribute them. So this was a box of apples that were going to someone who takes them to a local nursery. So, you know, the community centre is really good for our project because we can use it in lots and lots of different ways. And there's always lots of things going on. Let me see. So last year I did a lot of juicing at the community centre. Probably about once a week I went down and juiced. We got varying different levels of people coming along to help. This was just myself and some parent who popped in with their child, and then Bina, who's one of the volunteers and also works at the community centre. And they helped me juice. Another, I think the week after this, we had about 30 people, well, probably not 30 people, about 10 people with about another 10 children helping with the juicing. So that was quite good to do. It sort of gave us a chance to experiment and see how different things will work out. So like Joe said, the centre's always open for you to come down and do some experimenting. And the other thing at the centre is they have a little selection of fruit trees. They were rescued from a sort of, I wouldn't, from an orchard, sort of community orchard project that was planned on the cycle track, and unfortunately it wasn't. They were planted probably in the worst area because it flooded, and then they were kind of sort of subject to sort of several rounds of vandalism, but Stephen rescued the trees, and what was left of them was planted up at the community centre. So that's given us a bit of a focus to do some stuff about eating local fruit. You know, a lot of people sort of are a bit sceptical about, can you eat any apple that's growing on a tree? And the answer is yes. You might not like it, but you can eat it, won't do you any harm. So getting people involved in sort of looking at the trees and maybe how to look after them. Also when we did some workshops on sort of when to pick fruit, you know, when's it's going to be at its best, how do you know it's ready, how do you know it's going to be good to eat, and then what you can do with it once you've picked it. We also went out and did some foraging walks around Tang Hall, so that gave us a chance to look at, you know, sort of food for free and what's growing out there in the sort of wider area, so that was good. And yeah, that's my last slide. And then you know, we're back to the fact that we're back to just the fact that, you know, we now take our apples in and they go into the food hub and are sent out to people that need them. And we are doing that at the moment in about sort of 10 plus sort of pop-up food banks that are in the York area. So that's not the official food, sort of Trussell Trust type food bank, but this is food banks that are, you know, some people are set up in their own front yards, different community groups, all over the city. There's sort of different community groups having these pop-up food banks that people can access sort of easily and readily whenever they need to, without any sort of questions asked. So this year, that's how most of our work has been in doing these pop-up food banks. But I'll leave it there and open to questions rather than ramble on any further. Okay, do we want to swing it back to you then, Ruth, as host?
Yeah. Is that all right?
Yeah, no, I'll stop sharing. That's great. Okay.
Host. Strangely, I can mention Joe. Let's do that and share my screen and say, any questions for Louise? I think I did see one. Where's my chat window gone? There we go, get the chat window again. So Gavin was asking, what would you say is the ideal geographic size for this sort of success in Tang Hall? Does it need to be a neighbourhood level? Should it be citywide? Not sure. That one might be for the panel. How does the food circle get from local to producers to customers? No, there isn't any questions for Louise by the look of it. Anybody want to unmute and ask Louise a question directly?
Yeah, can I ask one? It's Stephen here. Just personal one, because Louise, you are absolutely obsessed with apples in a very positive way. Have you always had this obsession, or is it a newfound thing?
I think it's a newfound thing, to be honest with you, Stephen. It's probably since I started doing abundance. Although, funnily enough, I was reminded that a relative of mine has a sort of large orchard in their garden, and I think I was always quite intrigued by their trees, but I have to say I was never really sort of that into apples. It's just yeah, it's something that's grown with the job, really, and it's helpful to know more about apples to do this job, because it makes sure that we can use our apples at their best, rather than just pick them any old time and think, oh, that's not the best apple, when actually if you'd left it a bit longer it would be a really nice apple. But no, yeah, I've not had a constant obsession with apples.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Can't see me.
Cool. So really it's time for me to thank the speakers, because you've kind of pulled together lots of different stories there, and it's really nice to hear from lots of different things going on, and I've learned some new stuff there from our different speakers today. Any questions for the panel? I've got a couple to start us off. If you've got a question, stick it in the chat window or put your hand up and I'll come through to you. But maybe the one from Gavin might be directed towards Stephen or Anna. And what would you say is the ideal geographic size for this sort of success? Does it need to be at a neighbourhood level? Should the city be looking to increase this citywide, or would other neighbourhoods be better to emulate this on a single similar scale to Tang Hall? Gavin, actually, let me ask you, who do you want to direct that question to?
Sorry, I wasn't typing quite fast enough when Joe was finishing up. It was originally intended for Joe, but I'd be interested in anyone's thoughts, really.
Excellent. Joe.
Right, you are. Yeah, I think in terms of actual production, we need a fair bit of land. So I think we've got Newfield Organics, which is a 250-acre mixed veg and livestock farm on moors, and then others ranging from 60, 70 acres pasture-fed beef to, you know, the couple acres at Brunswick, etc. So in terms of land matter to actually create something that can feed a large, you know, number of people, yeah, we need a fair bit. But in terms of customer base, I think, and in terms of hubs, I think, yeah, neighborhood is the way to go. I think a lot of people have said that up and down the UK who are doing similar things. So Small Foods Bakery in Nottingham, you know, one of her things is obviously to run a successful bakery, but also to encourage another 100 bakeries to pop up in the city. That's kind of what we need. The small scale, for me anyway, is the height of resilience. In terms of farming anyway, you look at the weather we've been having over the last 2-3 years is pretty all over the place. If you're a large scale 1,000-acre arable farm, there's nothing you can do. Basically, if you've got a drought, you can't irrigate. If you've got poor harvests and it takes 3 weeks to do it, you're not going to gather it all in, which is why we're at the lowest wheat levels that we're going to have for however long. If you're on a small scale, like somewhere on Newfields, you know, you've got an opportunity to step in when the weather doesn't quite go your way. So yeah, I always think, you know, small is beautiful.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. There's actually another one for you, which was how does the food circle get from local producers through to their customers? Logistics.
Logistics, yeah. Yeah, it's not very complicated. In a van, my van usually. So we're completely producer led. If for the most part, I will go direct to the farm. In some cases, I will harvest and cut there myself. But to be honest, yeah, whatever's easier for them. For some producers, it is massively important actually to come down to the market and sell direct, because it's their weekly connection with customers. So Hillcrest will turn up Thursdays and Saturdays every single time, because that is at the very heart of their business. Whereas John at Newfields, to be honest, he can't be bothered. When he's got 100 hours a week, the last thing he wants to do is come down to York and flog some veg. Like, so we'll do that for him majority of the times, but we still push that producer market once a month, because again, I think that connection between customer and producer needs to be brought back.
One other thing I just wanted to say to add to that, and Bill will tell me off for not saying this before, and this has been done before. One of the things we're hoping to do early next year is to link up some of our community with the producers, you know, through Food Joe, and it's we've basically got another small pot of money just to link people up. So it's actually people going out to the producers to kind of go onto their sites, have a look, see where the food that they're eating, or will hopefully will kind of come from, and just kind of link up that experience, which has been, you know, this has been done many times before over the years. But as I say, for us, having Joe on site enables us to kind of do that full link, which is great.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stephen. There's just one last question for the panel, and anybody can chip in with this one. We've got a question from Himi Wu, which says, with 2 universities in York, what role do you think students can or should play in these community projects? Yeah, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, the universities themselves, I'm fairly pissed off about, to be quite frank, because they should be the absolute innovators in terms of how we should be living as societies. They should be testing things out and the research in place. And there has been a lot of money spent in developing agricultural research, but absolutely nothing done in terms of the customer base and small scale, nothing like that at all. So I would definitely want to see a lot more from the universities in a practical level in the years going forward. But in terms of students, I think, yeah, they've got a massive part to play. They're also at that point where they're starting to make decisions on how they spend their disposable income, which is obviously has a huge role in the local economy. Like, but also they've already been having huge roles. I think Your Cafe, the student input on that was pretty massive. And I think at the centre, there's loads of opportunities, whether it's growing, cooking, or just helping out. I think just to have that community interaction to show you how important that is actually for just life in general. Yeah, definitely. I think it was.
Yeah, I think Louise, you might have something to say about the university and the edible gardens there.
Yeah, well, yes. Hello, Himi. He's running a really nice little gardening project up at the university. It would be really nice to see students being a bit more proactive to get involved in community projects. I know they do, and they have facilities to help them get involved, but I don't think we see as many as we could, and I don't quite know what's the best way to do that. But I think also it's maybe linking up sort of what's going on in York with things that are going on at the university, so we can probably all do our bit to sort of keep an eye and share sort of things together. Yeah, I think sometimes, especially the York Uni, they've sort of stuck themselves outside of the city, and that's kind of how they sometimes stay, which is unfortunate. But it would be lovely to see more students getting involved with all these projects. And to be fair, you do see students getting involved, but maybe not as many as could. I don't know quite how to remedy that, but yeah.
And we should do better links with the Edible Uni, because I know there are some growing projects on the university.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, it would be nice to know. It'd be nice to know where Edible Uni's gone. It's disappeared. So yeah, we need to find out whether that's still going or not. It seems to be a bit of a disconnect. So yeah, okay.
Cool.
Hi, Ruth, I was just going to add to that. We've had lots of students joining in lots of different projects, but very intermittently over the last 5 years. And it's pretty much according to their timescale, really, and whether they can do stuff in a way that's actually effective to the community. So when they come into the centre, we're very open to what it is they want to try and achieve and work with us. We did have quite a lot of people helping us with Whole Road Park at the beginning from USU, but once they'd gone, it's all about the relationships and what they want to try and achieve in a short period of time.
Yeah.
But we don't hold our breath, because it's just difficult in terms of what they, in terms of just being a student, I think.
Yeah, and the short periods they're around, and
yeah,
sort of growing season's okay, but then harvesting season they might be back off home. So it's
there's a growing project in Whole Road Park a few years ago. It was part of the Edible York thing, but then that came and went, but that's been taken over by TCV. So I think if they're not running the project, it's easy for them to come and join when they can. But if they start running projects, it makes it quite tricky.
Yeah, excellent. Anybody else got their hand up? Bill, have you spotted anybody else with a question?
No, I haven't. No.
I think we're there. So I don't want to overrun too much, so I'm just going to show my last two slides and wind up. So thank you very much to our panel of speakers. Their contact details have been on that slide, and we're going to put the recording out there afterwards, but we can also email the contact details to everybody who's come along. Don't forget that this is just the start of York Environment Week, so this is a quick plug for the rest of the week. Go and sign up. There's loads more really interesting sounding talks coming up. And thank you from Edible York for joining us today. If you want our details, there they are, info@Edible York if you want to email us, or our website is edibleyork.org.uk. And of course, we're on social media, on Facebook and Twitter. And Louise might have started up an Instagram account, but I didn't have the details to put on the screen. And if you like what we're doing with sharing those apples around town, or planting new apple trees over the winter, which is coming up, and supporting our local veg beds and stuff, there's a quick plug for our Just Giving link down at the bottom there, but you can find that on our main website as well.